I'm fully convinced. We're stealing all of our tech from ancient temples. I know what you're thinking. That's just one example. No, it's not. That's a different temple, different ceiling. Okay, turbines are really complex. They got a lot of moving parts. Yeah, and they put those in there too. They're on the pillars. Speaking of pillars, you ever seen these? These are ionic pillars. Ionic pillars. I caught you. I'm onto you. I got you. Okay. Parabolic antenna. It's a fancy word for satellite TV dish. Egypt. Yeah, y'all have been to Karnak, I know. But have you been to the Osirian? Because from the top down, it looks a whole lot like a really basic computer processor. Probably just took a quick drive over to Promenade and upgraded the hardware, huh? Where are you going to plug that in? Ancient city in China? Right there, maybe? Feeling a little bit more Middle Eastern, maybe Persepolis? High frequency oscillator. You mean Angkor Wat? Yeah, cat's out of the bag, buddy. Micro resonator. You mean Tamil Temple? I didn't forget about the circuit diagram. Yeah, you didn't reverse engineer an acoustic masterpiece. Plasma confinement. Well, that's a quick little upgrade if you just go to Dendera. Then you got a cathode ray tube, old tube TV. Quantum computer. I need to see the sky miles, especially from the guys at CERN. Y'all think you're just so smart, huh? I'm onto you. These are Nagas from Cambodia, if you didn't know, but you probably should. Because they're hiding a secret. The secret is right there. You want to know what it is? I'm going to tell you what it is. Look real close at these snakes. They can be any variation from 1 to 12, but this one is 7, and it's 7 for a very important reason. Look at this thing. Now, those little guys look like that big circle up there. Why is that? There's 7 colors in the visible light spectrum. That's your Roy G. Biv. There's 7 octaves in music. This is a wave phenomenon. Now look close at that. Does it look like the Mayan calendar? Does it look like a rose window? Maybe it should, because we can decode all of these with cymatics. Now that particular one is a 21-fold cymatic from Angkor Wat. Let's look at another one. This one is a 6 positive or a 12-fold cymatic from Neek Pien Temple. I'm probably butchering that. Cymatics is how we visualize tones in music through water. Each tone has a glyph. The ancients had a very special way of calculating this, and I feel like you should know it. I'm giving you my $50,000 education in 2 minutes using a cartoon. Let's go. Computers, they work using crystals. That is correct. When you rub 2 crystals together, they give off a pulse of energy. It looks kind of like this. It's called piezoelectricity. It's used for clock speed. Computers take that signal and they convert it into binary. That number right there is how fast it can do math using a crystal trapped in a metal box. The box is airtight. It's called hermetically sealing from the god Hermes, who's actually Thoth. Perfect example would be these giant granite boxes in Saqqara, Egypt. The crystal signal goes into a pulse generator, which does a couple of these and turns it into a square wave. That makes 1s and 0s. When you sync it with the whole computer, it can do operations like math. So what do the squares do? These are like remembering a phone number someone told you real quick. This does all the math. These tell that answer where to go, like your display. Or you can hold on to it for later, like that phone number you'll never use. That was just this part of the brain. These little guys on our cartoon connect to everything else in the computer. Squiggly around the edge is the data bus. It's how these components talk to each other. If you can't tell by now, the computer processor is Viracocha, the deity of the ancient Peruvians. The very same people that built these impossibly large walls, terraformed an entire continent, while creating and cultivating the Amazon rainforest by hand. The processor isn't actually a processor either. It is my favorite ancient ruin to say Pakiakta. They built Pakiakta on a hilly terrain, but when viewed from above, it has perfect geometry. Now, how would you do that without leveling it first? There are almost no windows, very few doors, and very small hallways to walk through. MIT has done it again. They have solved the ancient riddle of the megalithic stones of Peru. By using advanced software, they have calculated the precise center of gravity for these 25-ton stones. They even replicated the interlocking joints, making the Peruvian stones earthquake-proof. By using a really dense concrete on the bottom of the stones and a lighter concrete on top, these stones stand up and are easily moved by a single person. They even nailed the mortarless joints. Problem solved, on to the next. Except not really. The biggest stone at Sacsayhuaman is 200 tons, 9 faces, and not round at the bottom. It's from that quarry, so it couldn't be poured. And there's another problem. These stones are being moved on perfectly flat concrete. These stones at Alante Tambo are a similar size and came from across a mountain. full disclosure, I think what MIT did is amazing, and they acknowledge the ancients, which is awesome. But until you can tell me how they moved this statue 900 kilometers, after they cut it out of one of the hardest materials we use for countertops, after they quarried it without machines like ours to be perfectly carved without diamond tip drill bits, I think we have a long way to go to explain all this stuff. The evidence for ancient technology is not going to be found near these temples. It's going to be the temple. This is Angkor Wat, and this is a CMOS sensor. Any digital camera will have one of these. That's Angkor Wat from above. What does a CMOS sensor do? It takes in light and converts that light to electrical signal. Why would ancients want to do that? To make that signal usable, we use something called a high-frequency oscillator. These create stable frequencies with no moving parts. They're used in everything. Should be no surprise at this point, the geometry of that oscillator is 4 resonators around one central resonator. Tesla uses these, which could be confused with ancient Peruvian architecture if you follow me. All resonators work by using cavities to excite and amplify a desired frequency in the center. Let's say we cut Angkor like that in half. I feel like it'd probably look a lot like that guy. Picked a great day to watch Bassforge. I'm full sending this one. You see that forested area conspicuously covered with trees? They scanned it with a laser on a drone to see what's underneath the trees. You know what they found?
What the hell is even that?
The acoustic waveguide for our oscillator happens to look just like that. If you watch the Prambanan video, you know that the interior of these temples looks just like a corrugated horn antenna. Those peaks are not decorative. They focus the signal as it exits the cone. This minimizes power loss and strengthens the signal. A phased array arrangement focuses the signal into the main horn. That is what the signal looks like, and that may be your design inspiration for a tower. The biggest cymatic pattern ever made is a temple. This is Borobudur. It is in Indonesia. I always thought this temple was super weird because it's perfectly geometric except for the circles in the middle of the temple. They're not quite perfect. The rest of the geometry, my last video, I showed you the simulation of the Chladni patterns. If you put sand on a plate and you play sound through it, it creates geometric shapes. But if you freeze the simulation right here, yep, it's perfect. They're not perfect circles because of the frequency. Each of the bells is a focal point for the frequency. That's why those circles are not perfect, except for the central one. Borobudur itself is a giant bell. There's nothing inside of it. The temple, you can't go in there. There's no chambers. Built on top of a mound. It should be quite obvious now that this is used to focus something. And here's how deep the Buddhist knowledge actually goes. This is called laser interferography. We shoot a laser of one frequency and split it into 2 frequencies and then bounce it off a mirror. And if we move those mirrors, the pattern the laser makes can be used to measure very small distances. When the waves sync up, they make a focal point, that red wave. When they're offset, it creates interference or a gap where the red line isn't there. When you measure that on a detector, it looks like this. So it has a resonance. It focuses light on a volcanically active fault line on the planet. There are no records of its construction, and nobody knows why it was ever abandoned. What do you think it was for? Maybe we should talk to the monks instead of Wikipedia. We got some very bizarre anomalies at Chichen Itza. Resonance and quantum. Check this out. So when you vibrate a metal plate with sand on it, you get these patterns called Chladni patterns. They're a form of cymatics. That's because the metal plate waves like a piece of paper. We just can't see it unless there's sand falling into the valleys. Freeze that at 3,590 hertz and you get the layout of the pyramid. The curved edge or fillet of those corners is marked by the cymatic pattern all the way up to the top. The most interesting part of this whole thing is the chamber at the top. There are 4 inlets marked by the frequency nodes, with the chamber in the chamber focusing the whole thing. Now this is probably not the exact frequency, but the top 2 layers match up almost perfectly. If that was not weird, it gets weirder. The double slit experiment, this is what happens when you pass photons through a barrier with 3 slits. Top graph, concentration of photons, red being the highest, blue being the lowest. The bottom is the photon's trajectory. Now this is what it looks like when we make 10 slots in the barrier. Hold that. Now during the equinoxes, the pyramid of Kukulkan does a very weird thing. It casts a shadow of a snake on the staircase. This begins March 21st and ends May 20th. May 20th is when the sun hits the zenith, the highest point in the sky, where it is aligned with the Pleiades star system. Now if you know no physics at all, you can clearly see that pyramid's focus at the top. Now there are 9 levels in this pyramid. There are 9 diffraction lines of focus. There are 10 slots in the grate. If you look at the design of the exterior of the pyramid, you'll notice that there are little notches on the bottom. There are 8 shown and 2 hidden by the stairs. So let's piece this together. 3 very old cultures shared knowledge of architecture, resonance, and mummification. All 3 disappear without a trace. Now, the builders of the Indus Valley were untouchable with their knowledge of resonance and made a bunch of videos on this, and they're clearly the oldest. Even the art of the Vedic and Buddhist cultures matches the architecture of the Mayans. Both reference the 7 serpents, the 7 stars in the Pleiades. Both deify a feathered serpent, energy, vibration. The stepwells of the Indus are almost exact inverted pyramids of the Maya. The stepwells collected water. The pyramids are above aquifers. Now, we've already explored the quantum connection. So the homework question is, what were they doing?